Good evening, guys, and thank you for coming to the May 27th special business meeting. If we all could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Tonight we are joined by 6 trustees. Our superintendent of schools, Dr. Timothy Harney. Our assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, Mr. Robert Haas. Our assistant superintendent for finance and operations, Mrs. Carrie Laughlin. Our assistant superintendent for personnel and PPS, Ms. Emily Ekstrom. And our district legal counsel, Mr. Evan McCarthy. And our district clerk, Ms. Suzanne Benetti. As always, there are 2 opportunities for the community to participate during the Board of Ed meeting. The first is just before the board takes up its agenda, and the second follows the disposition of all agenda items. As always, if you'd like to speak, you must be a resident or an employee of the school district. Any other person must be voted in by a majority vote of the board. As always, you can see in the back, we live stream every meeting and post it to board docs, and if you want to follow the district, you can follow us at BBP School District. Before we open it up for any community new or old business, I want to do a short statement. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I'd like to take a moment on behalf of the Board of Education to acknowledge the profound sadness and grief that continues to weigh heavily on the Bayport Blue Point community. Over the years, our district has faced many losses that has tested us deeply. Through each challenge, our community has remained strong, compassionate, and united in support of one another. During difficult times, we continue to lean on one another and the sense of unity that remains one of the greatest strengths in our school district. Our thoughts and condolences are with Jordan Duncan, her family, her friends, and all those who had the privilege of knowing her. Last week's announcement has renewed feelings of grief, heartbreak, and sadness throughout every school and every corner of the Bayport Blue Point school community. We recognize that these developments have impacted many students, faculty, staff, and families, and may continue to bring feelings of uncertainty, distress, and emotional pain. While the district will continue to respect the privacy rights of all those involved, as well as the ongoing legal process, we want the entire community to know that we fully recognize the weight and significance of this moment. Dr. Harney shared a letter last week. The district's support systems remain in place and available to any student, staff, or family member in need of assistance. We encourage anyone who may be struggling to reach out for their support. Most importantly, we will continue to move forward together as a community, supporting one another with compassion, kindness, strength, and care. Our hearts remain with everyone affected during this incredibly difficult time. With that said, we'd like to open it up for any of the community members to talk about any new or old business at this time. Not hearing any, we'll turn it over to Dr. Harney for a superintendent report. Dr. Harney?
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Not much new here tonight. The only thing I will share, and really basically let me restate that in the sense of that this is a special meeting tonight, so it's mainly to discuss the budget, which I will talk about during our opening presentation, so I'll spend majority of my time doing that. And then just as a side note, if you didn't hear this, also our boys tennis team today just became county champions for the first time as well. That's where Mrs. Kane is, and she's on her way back from there, so we're looking forward to having her back. And they will play again tomorrow. And then, as we said, we have a number of events going on over the next couple of weeks as we're getting close to the end of school. So please just take a look at your calendars. And then I said at our next formal meeting, we'll do more of an update. This is really more about the budget tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Harney. While we're getting this set up, we'll turn it over to Dr. Harney and Ms. Laughlin for our revote number 1 presentation.
Okay, so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to kind of walk through these areas, and I'll kind of do a rehash of kind of when we were building the previous budget, and then kind of what we're looking forward to or looking to do as we're moving forward. going forward. So tonight, we're really going to talk about the original budget recap. We'll talk about the 26, 27 options, because there are options for here, and that will probably be the first thing that we would need guidance from the Board of Ed on how to proceed with that. Give an update on the state aid update, and then also kind of talk about what would a contingency budget look like, and we'll go from there. These are basically our priorities, which I talk about every single meeting, or Ms. Lachlan talk about on a regular basis, and they are related to our strategic plan, and this is really what should guide us as we're looking at not only our budget, but everything we do within as a district. So this is a slide that was in the previous presentation. So we had probably done about 8 or 9 presentations, myself and Ms. Lachlan, whether it be at a board meeting, and then we went to a number of the various groups, and this was a slide that you often saw there. And one of the things we often talked about was the original budget challenges. So if there's any information you want to take a look at in regards to the original budget that was presented at the May 19th vote, it's all on our website. They're all listed there, so that's an opportunity for you to do it. But this is a slide that was there. The next couple of slides are slides that were part of that. Just back up for half a second. So obviously, we always continuously talk about our enrollment mandates. The one in the middle, limited state aid, it has changed since that, which we will talk about a little bit tonight. As I said, the new runs that came out through the governor's office came out on May 20th, which I find kind of ironic since the budget was on May 19th. So we're going to give an update on that now, which will have an impact if we do decide to go forward with a revote. That will be something that will play into this. Mrs. Lachlan will talk about the negative levy, which we've been talking about probably since the fall that we were looking at for this year, and then she'll also touch upon our operational costs. But for this next slide here, we're going to pass it over to Ms. Lachlan, who will talk about the negative levy that was part of the original, well, it still is, but it was really what drove us in terms of the budget that went up for the May 19th.
So as Dr. Honey said, we've been discussing this as we started doing projected tax levy limits back in December, and our calculation is a negative 0.761. That is our allowable levy limit. So anything that is an increase above that would require a supermajority vote of the voters, which is 60%, not your straight 50% approval of the budget. Our levy is a negative as a result of debt falling off. So capital bonds that were approved in the past, our debt has been paid off for one of those bonds in the amount of $1.4 million. That net of state aid goes into this calculation, and that is what has driven our levy down negative. In future years, it will level back up to normal. We're estimating about a 2% levy going forward over the next 4 years. We did request of the voters a 2.75% levy increase back on May 19th, and that was to support the budget proposed at that point in time. So just a quick update on the budget. As you know, May 19th, we had our vote, a 2.75% levy, which did require a 60% passing vote because it exceeded that negative 0.761 levy. As a result, we did pass it under the simple majority rule of 54.45%. However, as I said, 60% was required under the tax cap law.
So and this really brings us now to where we are here tonight and the reason for this special meeting. So really, as we look at this as a district, there are 3 options now that the budget had failed based on the supermajority. The 3 options are this. 1, to do nothing and go straight to a contingency budget, which we would talk to you about, which for us as a district would mean we would need to cut about $1.7 million in expenditures. So that's one option. The second option is to do a revote on June 16th, and that is a state date. That is not a date that we pick out of the air, just like when we had the Super Tuesday, which is what they call it on May 19th. This is the same idea. It's the 3rd Tuesday of June when they do all revotes across the state. So that's that. So we could ask for a revote. Then there are 2 options with that revote: to put up the exact same budget as we had gone forward with at that time, or to make some type of alterations to it if that is where we wanted to go as well. That is really something from a Board of Ed is something that we would need our guidance on in terms of, is it where we're looking at a revote? And then that would take us through the rest of our presentation here tonight as we were going to talk about that. But that is something that we'd have to decide sometime tonight. so that we can prepare. So since May 19th, as I said, the governor's budget, so just so we're aware of this, as I say, the governor's budget came out on May 20th. It has not been, as of tonight, it has not been voted on as of yet. So we are still waiting for that, okay? But saying that, we've always done the budget off the runs that were given to us. So the most recent runs, or the aid runs, or however you want to look at, is what we're seeing here. So we did get additional 1%, we believe, of foundation aid. And then we also did receive additional UPK monies within this. So those are the two things that we're looking at here. Just so you have an idea, and Ms. Loughlin will talk about this in a half a second, is the additional 1% is roughly about $118,000, which is what we've always said when we were doing our presentations. We said 1% is usually around $100,000. So we're pretty spot on. But again, we didn't account for any of that money in the May 19th vote.
So just again, another recap of May 19th vote that did not have successful vote. We were at a $387,020 of 2.75% levy increase, and that budget maintained all of our current programming that we're operating right now. We had some cost savings that we did realize that in that budget was through staff attrition in all different areas, staff with teachers, administration, clerical. Our utility costs were adjusted for based on the solar panels that were installed because of the energy performance contract. We had contract efficiencies just by natural process of reviewing all of our contracts, making sure we're utilizing cooperative bidding contracts, as well as additional BOCES contracts, shared services that we were able to start implementing for next year. Our budget maintained all programs, all health and safety equipment, all of our technology for our Chromebooks, our one-to-one devices for our students. We did add a girls flag football team. We're one of the, not the only school, but one of the few schools that don't have that team in place as of yet, as well as we were expanding our special education program at the middle school, adding an 811 program. So since we adopted the budget on April 21st, there have been some changes that have occurred, which typically do occur just in the natural cycle of preparing a budget and managing a budget. Our budget is a constant review. It's constantly changing. There are things happening that we've either planned for or we did not plan for. So as Dr. Harney said, state aid runs were received on May 20th. As a result of that, we budget for a portion of the universal pre-kindergarten program. We got funds for, it's a per pupil funding amount. That's a grant. It's not technically state aid. It does show on your runs. That grant did not cover all expenditures to run the program for all of our students. So we did support that with our general fund. As a result of the state budget being tentatively approved, they are guaranteeing an increase in funding in that area. Therefore, we are able to confidently reduce our expenses in the budget by $499,000 because the grant funds will now fund that program. In addition, $118,000 on the revenue side is received for foundation aid. So our revenue has gone up. And then as a result of just some placement changes, as things are happening in the special education area, we do have some things that have occurred for next year that we're not budgeted for, that this time is giving us the opportunity to take care of that, to make sure we have that in the budget for next year, so we don't run that code into a deficit. So the net decrease to the budget is $348,000. So you have to look at this as we have an expense reduction, we have an expense addition, but we also have a revenue addition on the entire budget from what we had adopted on April 21st. So now we have some different tax levy options. Again, our levy limit, allowable limit with a simple majority is a negative 0.761%. Our failed budget is 2.75% of a levy. And just for reference for the board, as you're looking through this and making these decisions, every 0.25% of our levy is a $155,000 increase. So just for your own knowledge, as you're trying to make a decision as to where we would like to go. Our proposal for 26-27 for potential revote on June 16th would be to continue maintaining all of our programs that we originally proposed from the adopted budget on April 21st, but also take into account the additional state aid and grants that I just discussed for that in order to reduce our expenditures and increase our revenue. Now, as Dr. Harney said, we have the three options. The board could immediately adopt a contingency budget this evening or tentatively at a future meeting before the vote, or we could go to a vote. If we do go to another vote and that vote is not successful, we immediately go to a contingency budget. That is a 0% increase on the current year's levy. So a contingency budget is actually better than our allowable levy limit budget. So in essence, if we even put up a vote of this, we still need a simple majority. If we don't vote, we immediately fall to this. So that is important to know. Your levy under a contingency is the same levy you're operating under in current year. So this would result in $1.7 million of reductions to the budget that was failed on May 19th. If it's defeated, a real keynote is outside facilities use would not be allowed under contingency. There's a lot of non-contingent items that get removed from the budget immediately, as well as, like I said, the board could either adopt tonight a contingency budget at a future meeting, or if we fail on the 16th with a revote, we immediately go to this. So some non-contingent items, these are reductions that must occur. There's no conversation to be had about it. The board can't say, but wait, we still need these items. This is under educational law. So we have capital transfer of $300,000 for projects that would be eliminated. We were going to be purchasing a new pickup truck, new lacrosse cages. We have custodial grounds and maintenance equipment that are non-health and safety related would get pulled out. Art tables, the 3D printer. We have equipment in there for music. We have some contingency equipment lines just in case some things break. Computer equipment, as well as our summer BOCES enrichment program. But the key thing to know also, the non-financial impact that you would see is there would be no facilities use for our outside groups for the entire school year effective July 1.
So as Ms. Lockwood was just talking about, those were some of the non-contingent items. So then what we tried to do as an administrative team is take a look at that money. What Ms. Loughlin had on the previous slide does not get us to that $1.7 million. So again, those are non-negotiable, those ones that would be the first ones. Then you'd start to look at the next group, which would then start to have impact on programs. And here we created a list. We tried to go about it. We tried to think very carefully about this. We tried to go across the board as well into all different areas. I'm not going to go through everything in here. It's not in a priority order. We are not ready to do that at this time. This is more things, and just so that the board is aware, this would get us more than the 1.7 million, and we know that. But what we wanted to do is at least point out these are all the areas that we would be currently looking at. Because remember, if we go forward with a revote, people are not voting on necessarily, I mean, they do vote what's on the budget, but it's about the whole number, right? Where the last time it was $88 million and change. If it went to a contingent budget, it's $86 million and change. And that is really what that is voted on that day. But these are all the things that we would take into consideration from really extracurricular. And we tried to do anything that was not obviously impacting what is mandated, number one, and then two, the general curriculum that we offer to our students and the programs that we offer. Also starting to take a look at it also from, and again, we go across areas from curriculum development, PD, to arts and ed, to obviously, as I said, some athletics, some sports, some music. We started to take a look at everything as we were looking at this. So again, I will reiterate, this is not necessarily saying if it goes to contingency budget, everything from here would be removed. That's not what I'm saying. This is the list that we would go to, and then we would start to take a look at that if that was the case. So that's what we're looking at right now. So for the 26-27 revised budget, so we are asking or to ask for recommending a revote for the June 16th. The number of the total budget proposal is that 88, but that's the old, oh, that's the new number of it. It's 88,038,957, okay? That is less than was proposed at the May 19th. What that translates into, if people always think about the tax levy, where we had proposed the tax levy at that point of 2.75, we are now proposing, and this is based on the revenue and the reduction in expenditures that we had talked about previously, we're talking about a 2% raise. So it still need the supermajority vote, but that is what we're looking at here. It would allow us to maintain everything that we still had in the budget, all of our programs, everything that we had proposed in the 2.75 would still be in there. Again, the only real difference is, as of May 20th, we have this additional revenue that can go towards to offsetting some of the expenditures, as well as the foundation aid that came in place. And that's where the difference is. If we wanted to look at anything else, as Ms. Lachlan said, everything in addition is another $155,000 if you're doing just the 0.25%. And this would be our timeline. So we are looking, because obviously we have a very short timeline. We have less than 3 weeks right now. So we have tonight's meeting. If there's more information you need, then we do have a slot for June 1st. If we can make a decision tonight, that would obviously be helpful to us as well in terms of getting all the information out, because we still have to do a six-day notice. We still have certain rules and regulations that we need to follow, but if not, we can hold off to the 1st. We are planned. We would then do a budget hearing. If you remember, just like in May, early May, we had to do a budget hearing. We would do that again at our normal scheduled meeting, which is June 8th, and then the 16th would be the vote. So that kind of shows you where we are and really what we've been working on. And this really has been a team effort with all the administrators. We've met on a number of occasions trying to kind of put something forward tonight so that we could at least have a discussion. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board.
Thank you, Dr. Harney. Ms. Lachlan, we'll open it up for trustees. Any questions? Mr. Johnson?
So I saw on the slide you said facilities for outside groups no longer, but that doesn't include revenue generating. Would that, like dance competitions and stuff
Correct.
like that?
So while we do charge for outside facilities groups, under contingency budget, you cannot incur any expenditures. So we don't charge for, let's say, utilities for use of air conditioning and heat. We have a per room charge that doesn't necessarily cover 100% of those expenses. I did have a conversation with council today about this to make sure and clarify that. It is basically under a contingency budget. Any group that could potentially incur a charge to the district cannot use the facility. So something to note also, as we were talking, another piece of this is the My Kids program. They would not be able to operate because they don't pay rent. There is not a fee given to the district for that. In addition, scope, we would have to have a conversation with them as well as the Y to pay additional rent to make sure that they're covering their costs 100%. So that could be questionable as well. The dance schools, yes, they do pay to use our facilities, but like I said, they are not always truly covering 100% of there's some of those indirect costs. So in conversation with council, as well as reading the law, districts just tend to shy away 100% from outside groups. Our school groups will continue to use the building. So our extracurriculars, our clubs, our athletics, they're all part of the curricular program. So they will be able to continue nighttime activities, after school activities without any issue.
So what is our potential loss in revenue if we're not going to allow outsiders that fall within those scopes?
So we have about $100,000 budgeted for revenue for outside groups with the expense on the same side. So it's kind of like a net because we do plan for that, but none of that would occur under a contingency budget.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any other trustees? Mr. Sauter?
I'm sorry, just for a second. Just as Ms. Lachlan was talking, when she was talking about the My Kids, which is really something we only discovered late this afternoon as we're kind of going through this for the first time as well, that would fall under that list of basically mandated that we'd have to. That wouldn't be in the list that we were looking at. That would fall under that list as well, just so that people understand that.
Mr. Sauter?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much for putting together this recommendation and for going back over this budget proposal and keeping everything updated. So I just want to back up a second and ask about, so now you're recommending a 2% budget, which I felt personally, the previous budget was, pretty tight as it was, but obviously we have this now inflow of additional funds and changes. But if we look at the new recommendation that you're making, 2%, how does this compare to the previous budget increases over the last 10 years?
I'd have to pull up one of the slides, but if you were to look at the 2%, if you probably looked at the last 10 years, it would be on the lower side of the ones that have come forward, at least in the last 5 years, minus this current year, which is a 0.25%. right? Outside of that, majority of them were in the upper 2s, low 3s, and if you remember, there were 3 of the 5 years that the allowable tax levy was higher, where we went under the allowable tax levy as well, which is, again, things at that time when we had done it, we knew people talked about it leaving money on the table because your base now is lower than what it would have been, which kind of happened over years, so that is just something, but we were very cognizant. It was during COVID times, and a lot of people were struggling, so it's something as a board and that we talked about, and that's one of the reasons why we had done that at that time.
Thank you.
Any other trustees? So I would just say, Dr. Harney, is this the exact same budget? It's just at 2.0 because of the foundation aid and the pre-K aid?
Yeah, basically, it would have in there pretty much everything that was part of the presentations that we had done and up to the May 19th vote. It's exact same budget. The only difference here now is the additional money that we received from the state, which again, we found out the day after. And that's not, and I shouldn't say it wasn't just a Bayport Blue Point, the entire state found out the day after.
Any other trustee questions? Ms. Pignataro?
Less a question, kind of more an observation, but I want to thank you for your work in putting this together. I know that many of us didn't really think we would be in this position, so I really appreciate the work that you've done. I know we're not necessarily at the discussion of numbers yet, but I can say I have no interest in going straight to contingency. The district I work in has been on a contingency budget, and that was almost 2 decades ago, and we're still recovering from it. So I would like to see a revote of some kind. I know we'll discuss that. But I also just wanted to take a moment to thank the community members who made time to attend tonight or to watch us on the live stream. We have, I would say, approximately 10,000 registered voters in Bayport Blue Point, and we had around 1,200 votes in the last election or in the last budget vote. So if the revote is important to the folks that are here or to the folks that are watching, in whatever direction you plan to vote, make a voting plan for June 16th. I think community engagement is one of the most important things that we have. I've said that before. I've said it here when folks came to speak about UPK. I thanked them for their engagement and told them that I hope that they would continue to engage with us. I would love to see more community engagement and folks letting us know how they feel. I know Ms. Laughlin and Dr. Harney gave many, many budget presentations to small groups. We'd love to see more people. There are several members of the Budget Advisory Committee here tonight. They're community volunteers who give their time to discuss the budget all year round, and they're constantly seeking new members. So I think if nothing else, we have a moment here where we can kind of reflect on where we want to go moving forward. I'm thankful that you were able to find a way to preserve programs and still bring that tax levy number down a bit from 275 to 2. But I just kind of wanted in general to recognize the engagement we have tonight and just say that I hope it continues.
Thank you, Ms. Pignataro. Any other trustee questions? Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, so Tim, I forgot the name. I was trying to ask Mr. McCarthy here. What was the name of the issue we had with state aid about 2 years ago where it looked like not only was it going to freeze, but we were actually going to lose significance?
Are you talking about the Save Harmless or Harm?
Correct.
Okay, so.
Where has that gone? Is that still?
I mean, the answer is right. The idea was for people, the question that Mr. Johnson is asking is related to foundation aid, and there's a term that they used to call is Save Harmless. And basically is districts, they put a regulation, I guess, in many, many years ago, and basically at that point it was that districts would not receive less foundation aid than they did the year prior. If you remember a couple of years ago, our governor basically shared that she was restoring all the aid to all the districts. And then almost immediately, the year after that, everything was frozen, okay? But the whole goal was you would get at least your Save Harmless, which would mean you get at least what you got the year before. And then sometimes it would be a minimal increase. So as the years have gone on too, it used to be 150 schools that were on the hold harmless. It's called Save Harmless or hold harmless. People use those words interchangeably. And now it's more than half the districts across New York State are falling under that same piece. So usually it's receiving the same amount of aid, if not, or a minimal increase, which everyone now seems to be, it's going to be at 2%. We had the one, it looks like we're going to have this one. But you are correct in what you said. Years ago, they were talking about of removing the hold harmless, and I think that's what you're referring to, Mr. Johnson, where then it says they were going to take a look at that again. So that has always been a concern of that could always change.
So my experience being on the board is, tax increases and future revenue generalized, it's very consistent, meaning like if you raise taxes 1%, it's always accumulates. So you get that 1%, and then the percentages on top of that each year. Foundation aid and all state aid, whatever they put out is never accurate because they lump in reimbursements like building aid and stuff like that into it, stuff that we already had to lay out money for. But foundation aid, I think in Long Island is a very unpredictable thing, especially in districts of our demographic. I don't know if that's going to get any better. And, I'm happy that we got the extra 100,000, but I don't know if that's something we should be banking on as future revenue consistent every year. That's something that I'm a little worried about, looking at this budget. We raised the quarter. Unfortunately, the budget only increased by, on average, 1/4 point last year. Fortunate, but unfortunate because it's tough to kind of consistently keep up with inflation and everything that's going on. So I do fear that the state is will run into situations like most organizations do when costs rise like they are, and will the foundation aid be consistent in years to come, and who's going to lose the aid first, which districts, which areas. These are things that I think about and I speculate about a lot. So I do think there's a lot of uncertainty out there to bank on that type of stuff.
I think probably the bigger question to go along with that, Mr. Johnson, is what is going to happen to the foundation aid formula, which has been a discussion for years, right? I don't know how long into the future you'll hear those terms, hold harmless, save harmless. I think it'll be more about what is the new formula and what does the new formula look like. They've made slight alterations. They spent all this money on a study. If you remember last year, that was a whole big piece of this, and I'm talking about, state ed. That was a big thing that they had done, but we really haven't seen the full results or any more alterations to that formula yet. And I think that is probably the bigger question of what is that going to look like come the future. And we both have no idea in terms of the answer. We hope that they include certain things. Both our organizations are advocating for certain things, but I'm not sure, we don't know where that's going to go.
And I also, I do not only keeping up with the uncertainty or I'm trying to think not next year, I'm trying to think, long after I'm gone, like how does this play out? What are the next 5 moves on the board? And I've seen over the last 10 or 15 years, neighboring districts that have kind of pieced together and gotten the budget through patching it up. And then 3 or 4 years later, they're back in this situation. Not only do I want to maintain programs, but I also want to put us in a position that, the next superintendent and the next board in 2 to 5 years isn't having this type of conversation again. And that was part of the reason we went to this, figuring that that 1/4% last year, 2.75 next year would be 3% across 2 years. 1.5% a year is not a bad increase in today's times, and it put us in a trajectory that we weren't going to have this discussion. That's my other fear is looking at temporary. It's BOCES. Yeah, we made some moves or some moves in special education if they're related to BOCES, but BOCES can increase an extra % or 2 a year or 2 from now and throw that savings off. These are only 1-year savings, but the tax increase, whether it's 0%, 2%, 2.75%, that controls how much money you get consistently every year because it's priced into the model. It's consistent, it's relied upon. Some of these savings aren't something that you can see every year. That's the only thing I kind of look at when we look at this discussion of this or that.
Can I just ask one more question? Thank you, Brian. Those are some great questions, comments. Made me think of something. And, I just wanted to ask, this is a pretty, at least from my understanding, a pretty unusual year because of the negative tax cap. Could you just explain, like, how, and I guess I want to understand this too a little bit, but like, how often does this happen? This is pretty rare, right?
It is rare, yeah. It's very few districts have seen this since the tax cap got put in place 15 years ago. Again, it's just because debt has fallen and we haven't replaced it with new debt. So if we were just starting a bond in this current school year, which payments would hit the books next year, they would net each other and we wouldn't be seeing this. But because we don't have a bond starting, and really the reason for that, it's conversations we have had, but we were not yet ready just to take on a new bond and a new debt schedule, primarily because the old bond got delayed with COVID and just finished. So, we weren't yet ready to have that public conversation, oh, thanks for just finishing one, let's start another one right away, being mindful of the taxpayer and of the community and putting that burden on our taxpayers. So it is very rare because typically you know your debt schedule for 15 to 20 years out, and you want to plan to make sure as debt falls off, you replace it with new debt. So it becomes a net effect on your tax levy calculation. Like I said, very few districts. One district last year did see the similar effect because of that situation. It really just has to do with the capital exclusions and making sure that you're managing those year over year. But as you all know, the past 5 years have been a little unsteady, and we don't know what's coming our way. So that's essentially why that's happened.
Yeah, just on a side note of that, so if you're thinking about it, right, the community on our last bond approved a budget of a bond of roughly $30 million this 2015. That project wasn't done until 2020, right, which is only 6 years ago, and that's what Ms. Lachlan is kind of alluding to. So a lot of districts, they don't see the negative because they automatically put on other debt or start another bond or a large capital project. If we were to do that now, it would have been inappropriate because we would have just rushed something. It needs a lot more thought to do that. So that's why you'll see it in our case that, as Ms. Lachlan said, is that we had the negative debt this year. And this isn't something that we didn't know was coming. We knew that because we have a debt schedule. It's not something that was unpredicted. It's something that we saw. But it was either that or try to put up something else for another bond or something along those lines. Hence, one of the reasons why we started to initiate a capital reserve. This district has never had a capital reserve, right? So it's something that we wanted to do. So that would be a way for us to start to fund some other projects as opposed to going bond. That's going to take 10 years, okay, to put money into that. So it's a slow process, but there is a plan behind it and things that we were thinking about as we were going forward with this. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, I just want to make sure I understand. So basically, had we spent more money by proposing a new bond,
it would not
by
have
spend
been
more money, we wouldn't have had.
It's pretty fair to say we would not have had a negative tax levy.
Right. So it's actually because we were. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm trying to understand it. It's because we were actually being, as as school administrators, and this district was being fiscally prudent. That in fact we had a negative.
Yeah, we're not prepared right now to put additional debt on without doing it properly.
Any other trustee questions?
I just want to point out that just in, I guess, kind of a question, but really speaking out loud. So, you kind of think that, well, debt's coming off, so the expense is coming off, so that's a good thing. It should net out. But what I think a lot of people don't realize is you lose the debt, you're also losing the building aid. Correct? So
yeah.
You're losing like 65–70% of that money. So your budgetary impact is very small compared to your tax cap impact, which is fully gets hit with that. Is that accurate?
That's part of it, but the other part of it is inflation has been outpacing everything. Right? If you just from one of our old slides, right, if you remember that, and we didn't put it back in here, is if you just look at the last 5 years, we've been able to put basically the 2% cap into the formula. If you look at the difference between that and inflation, there's about a 12% difference between inflation and what we've been allowed to put into the formula. Just think about that over 5 years. It just continuously adds up. So that's where you're also seeing it. That's where I talk about the expenditures are outpacing. And think about we're getting $100,000 in additional aid. That's part of the discussion.
Ms. Conley?
Thank you both for all the time and effort that you've put into both your original budget presentations and this revision. I thought that you put out a fair budget the first time around that preserved everything that we know and love about this district. And I think you've thought very carefully about reducing staff through attrition over the next 5 years. We know everyone who's retiring this year and then the 4 coming after this one. I supported the 2.75. I think knowing what we know now, I support your recommendation for going out with the revised 2. That's it. Thank you.
Any other trustee questions? Any community members with any questions? Yeah, if you just want to come down. If you could just give us your name and if you're from Bayport or Blue Point.
Hi, I'm Carol Sampson, and I live in,
Thank you for coming down.
I'm just curious, because I see the summer BOCES program.
Yeah.
Does that mean that they won't have the special needs kids, the summer school or summer program for those kids? That program would remain, that's a federal program. That's all I wanted to know.
Yes, is she talking about the Senate school year? Oh. Yeah.
Is a program that we partner with BOCES for, and it's really like almost like additional enrichment type of class. It's not a mandated thing, so where especially a 12-year program. That's correct.
Okay, so the camps and everything that they have at Academy, and like I said, so the special needs kids, they'll still get to go through school for the summer?
They're part of a 12-month mandated program.
Okay.
That program is still running.
Okay, great. That's all I wanted to know.
Thank you so much. Any other community members? Ms. Sauter?
Really quick. So when you say no facilities used for outside groups, I just want to be like really crystal clear. So it's like the PAL teams that practice, the PAL, all the like youth football, all that stuff that's happening on the field. That cannot happen. I also didn't know that cost us money. Also, congratulations on your first year. What a ride.
Any other community members? Thank you so much for coming.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Carey. I've been living.
Can you just use the mic so they can get you on the film?
My name is Lorraine Carey. I've been living here for 50 years. Love Bayport Blue Point.
Mhm.
However, I feel it's insulting to offer the same budget.
And why do you feel that way?
The community, we had a vote. The budget was voted down.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to make revisions, what they're offering is not really revisions, it's just things that happen to come through. There's fat in that budget that I'm sure can be trimmed. One of them is, do we really need a new truck? Do we really need new tables in the cafeteria? I come down here all the time. I don't see anything wrong with the tables. There's probably staff members that could be cut. But I just feel that if you're going to offer another budget up, like, let's be fair. We're trying to stay here, not leave. I've been paying taxes for 50 years. 5 kids went through the district. I love it here. You're pushing us out.
Well, that's definitely not the goal. I mean, we're going to have a conversation in a minute where the board wants to go, but we'll see. The goal is not to be frustrate you. We're not trying to push anyone out.
Well, to put the same budget back up, to me, is frustrating.
I mean, I can't tell you how to feel, but what I would say, though, is you're cutting over $380,000. So it might be the same programs and places, but it will not be the same price.
By doing another revote,
Yep.
what is the cost to do that?
Approximately 8 to 10 grand, I believe a vote is. Typically 8 to 10,000, I believe a vote is.
How much?
About 8 to 10,000, I believe. We'll get you the real number, but it's about 10.
Okay, I just think that this time you had some maybe older people come out, and I hope that they're going to really put it out there that people do know when the vote is. When we had those papers come through, it alerted people. And it's shameful that more people don't come out and vote.
Well, I mean, I can only speak from my perspective. The last couple of weeks, I've had a lot of people apologizing that they didn't come out and vote. So I I can't expect it, but I would hope that this will be back in the 70% after that night.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. How's it going, Mr. Savage?
Egan Savage Bayport, thank you guys very much. I'm a little out of school, no pun intended here. Just so you guys have a little background, I come from over 80 years of early education in my family, my immediate family. My sister just graduated from Stony Brook with an administrative degree. So I have nothing but respect for what you guys do. That doesn't mean I have understanding of the in and outs. So some of my questions, if they're naive, I apologize. You mentioned 0.25% budget raise last year, and then 0.76 negative tax levy cap. Is it simple math? If we did 1.25% last year, still a nice budget increase, would that have brought us in at almost a 0% cap this year? A little bit less? Does it work that way, or was there a way for us to not have a 0.76% negative cap so we didn't have to do some majority and have that? Okay.
If it was higher than that, yes, it would impact that negative 0.761. Potentially it would be a negative 0.54. It wouldn't have made too much of a difference, basically because the debt is falling off. That really is a significant impact.
So in theory, if over the last 10 years we did maybe 10 basis points a year more, still stayed under the cap, which you said we were way over for those 10 years, we could have been financially prudent. I think I heard that word used incorrectly, and have gone ahead of this. Is that possible? That could have been done? Okay. Question was asked about the last 10 years, the increase in the budget of the last 10 years. I think we said it was somewhere around average of like 2%. Okay. Right. About what has our budget increase been over the last 10 years, not tax levy?
So being the newbie on the dais here, I don't have built into my head yet what our past budget-to-budget increases have been. The budget that we did propose on May 19th was actually a decrease in the budget. It was a negative 0.85% decrease budget to budget, and primarily because of the debt falling off. So we did lose that expenditure side, but we did have contractual increases. As we said, inflation is rising, so cost of contracts are going up in relation to our providers that we bring in for our special needs students. Our transportation contracts, our health insurance rates are all increasing. So from the current year that we're operating into the original proposed budget, it was a decrease in the budget. But what our increases budget to budget have been over the past 10 years, I can't answer that off the cuff, but I can certainly get that information for you. I can't answer that one. Again, when it comes to the taxes, there's a lot that goes into that calculation. Mr. Devine is here, who works for the assessor's office, could help. You can certainly have a conversation with him. The assessor, and understanding what our assessments are and the equalization rate and all of those things that come into that calculation. So it depends on what those other districts are doing at that particular time as well. So there's a lot of variables that come into play there. So we wouldn't be able to say definitively a yes or no on that one.
I appreciate it. parts is that contingency budget you were discussing. When did you guys start like discussing and putting together? You said you guys just started going with those numbers. That's only been the last couple of weeks.
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
I mean, honestly, we always have to talk when this line does the 6-day notice and it goes out there, it's listed in there, but in there, in terms of the one. Yeah, but at that point, all we have to do is put the number of what a contingency budget would be. That's what we had done. That's correct. So when this failed on Tuesday night, the 19th, pretty much right after that is when we started. We actually met the next day as a group, and that's where we started from.
Same outside factors as we do, but not always be that highest tax district every year, but not highest ranked district.
Well, I would disagree in one sense, is I don't think every district comes from the same base. So for example, everyone has different foundation aid. That's number one, right? And it varies from district to district. Different people also have difference in between a homestead and non-homestead. How much is our community putting into it as opposed to the local businesses? So those are things that are playing into it as well. So I do think there are variables from district to district. But from the inside is, even just this past year, right, we talked about, as we've been looking at enrollment, we have been reducing staff through attrition. That is something we're consciously doing. As Ms. Kane mentioned early on, is we know now pretty much going forward is what is our retirement's going to be for the next 4 or 5 years. So again, it's trying to be able to predict for the future. So those are some small things. Ms. Laughlin's working with the transportation company. So all these other things. We put in the solar, which we have not seen all the reaps and benefits from that because that project took so long to be put in through the providers that we're doing. So we're hoping that will kick in now. So these are all the operational efficiencies that we've been doing over the past couple of years.
Okay, I appreciate that. When we look at those districts also, though, some factors that are left out is obviously buildings, right? We have more buildings that.
Correct. Like, for example, in Mount Sinai, where everyone was similar sizes, right? One property is all that. That is a big difference. That is correct.
Same enrollment. They only have one superintendent, one assistant superintendent.
Yep.
Where Ms. Bill, 13 years ago, you first ran for the board, in the boards. But, you know, Dr. Ernie, you were the assistant superintendent. One of the big things you ran on was, why do we need 2 assistant superintendents? We just need 1 for a district this size. District's come down 30% since then. You know, we now have 3 assistant superintendents, 1 superintendent. And if you look at the numbers, our assistant superintendents either get paid in line with, some more than those other superintendents that the districts that we're compared to.
I would just say education is very different since I ran for the Board of Education a long time ago.
I can agree, very much so.
We're hoping to wrap this up.
That's interesting. Well, you said we have to wrap this up?
I mean, do you have another question?
I don't have any other questions. I was hoping for a little more feedback, but no feedback from the board or any other answers to any of the questions I had, other than from them.
Well, I don't want to sit up here and debate you. I mean, I see it differently, but I mean, I understand and respect your perspective.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Savage.
Thank you.
Any other questions from community members?
Hi, Kathy.
How's it
I'm on
going?
Bayport. Can you just clarify for me, the outside groups that are using the building, they're not being charged 100% of what it's costing us for them to use the building?
So we have a facilities use policy, and with that, we have a fee schedule that goes with it. So they are paying for any additional custodial fees, security fees. We do have a per room, per hour charge for all of those individual groups as well, for the turf fields, for the baseball fields. So there is a fee schedule. When we're talking a contingency budget, it is best to not allow those groups because you can't guarantee you're incorporating that dollar value is truly covering the full 100% cost of running your air conditioning, having the electric on for all those buildings. Should something, go arise and now we have to pull an additional custodian that they've already prepaid, typically we bill ahead of time and they pay before the use. So now we have to make sure we can bill and collect those monies and chase them down to make sure we get that. So in that aspect, while we do have that fee schedule, it's adopted every year, and we are looking at it for the new year, but that is kind of on pause right now as we're waiting for the budget for June 16th. Correct. We are, yes, I am working with the Buildings and Grounds team to make sure that we are recovering the costs that are incurred for facilities use. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Highland. Any other community members? Not hearing any, open up to the board. Does anybody have any concerns about not doing another budget vote? Yeah. Does anybody not want to have another budget vote? Meaning going to a contingency budget? Not hearing any, are there any conversations about where we would like to go in regards to a levy? Dr. Harney is recommending a 2.0. That keeps the budget the exact same way, but it drops at about $380,000. Does anybody have any concerns going with that? Mr. Sauter?
Yeah, I'd like to speak on this, and this is in line with some of the questions I was asking earlier. And, this budget, and I just want to say that we have, and it's been discussed already, and, we have the chairman of the Budget Advisory Committee here, and another member. And, this budget has been looked over by members of the community. It has gotten, input from the community. We've had presentations where the community's been able to ask questions about it. Stakeholders have been able to participate in the budget process. It's a tight budget. It's a reasonable budget. I know Dr. Harney didn't say that it was, you couldn't give it an exact number, but in my experience, because I did, work on the Budget Advisory Committee for a couple of years, in all the budgets that I saw, this is less of an increase. And this is a reasonable budget. I say it again, it's a tight budget. And this is a unique scenario where we have a negative tax cap, like levy, we have to, rather the tax cap is a negative number. That's like really almost hard to comprehend, And I think when I look at this, when I look at the recommendation that Dr. Harney has put forth, I think it's extremely reasonable that we would adjust because as Ms. Laughlin brought up, we're constantly adjusting budgets, we're constantly updating, we're constantly taking in new information and taking into account what is now a new source of revenue, a new expense, and then adjusting the budget based on those things. But keeping what we believed was already an established budget that took 9 months to produce, and the public has been part of producing that budget for, during that time. It seems reasonable based on the amount that it's asking to increase, and given the unique circumstances that we're facing, that we keep the budget and that we revote on it and that we update it based on the new information that we have. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Those are my thoughts on it. I think we should adopt Dr. Harney's recommendation. I think we should have another vote.
Thank you, Mr. Sauter. Any other, Ms. Pignataro?
Just a couple of quick questions. So I know in previous presentations, Ms. Laughlin, you had said that the 2.75 would result in about a $24 a month for the average home, I think. You know what I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you what the 2% would look like, again, for the average home. While you're looking for that, can I ask a separate question? Many people that I spoke with, and I myself was used as a soundbite on News 12 talking about how our community typically passes budgets. So with that said, many people in my own circles have said, I didn't realize the day, I wasn't aware, etc. I'm thinking about communication. I know that the district has rolled out an app. We can discuss, in future meetings, maybe the capabilities or use of that app, but It's my understanding that Apogee or Rooms has the capability to push out a text message. Is there a way that perhaps we could push that out to folks ahead of the revote?
So the answer is, does the app that we use, like for my normal notices, have the text piece to it? Yes, you can do that. And it would just be reminding people that there's a vote.
That's essentially what I'm asking for. Yeah, it's just a reminder, the polls are open from this time to that time on this date.
Correct. We will do another newsletter as well. We will do another 6-day notice, which will go to the entire community
Right.
as well. So we will do that again in terms of that. We're also going to try to do a little bit more in the outside in terms of putting additional signs outside in terms of, even in the other buildings, hey, the vote is over at the high school, whatever it may be. So we're going to look to do that. We've already started to talk about that. Just again, so that people are aware that we're looking at that. To go back to your first
Sure,
question
yes.
now, it looks like it, and again, when we had done this for the 24, Ms. Locken always gave the caveat, there's so many things that
So
we
many
don't
different
see,
homes and
don't
so
know.
many different factors,
Different
yes.
towns, equalization rates, but we think it'll be around 1748 per month.
Okay, so approximately $17.50 per month to continue to preserve the programs as presented in the previous
Correct.
budget.
Correct.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that as well.
Thank you, Ms. Pignataro. Any other discussion? Anybody have any concerns with 2.0?
I'm not going to fight the current, but like I said, I'm going to put that out there. I think we're going to be back in this room, or whoever is here is going to be back here in a few years, because I just don't want to be back in this situation where we're talking about piercing the cap. I've seen budgeting my entire career. Like, it's consistency. Like, we want to keep consistent streams of increases around the 2-ish% and keep costs like in that range. And I just think that, you know, it's with the uncertainty in the next couple of years, banking on things that we can't bank on next year and the year after. But like, that's my only concern, is I don't want to be in this discussion a few years down the road.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any other trustees? All right, so I'll make the motion. Make a motion for the Board of Education of the Bayport Blue Point School District to adopt the expenditures to operate the schools for the 26-27 fiscal year, which requires a tax levy increase of a 2.0, which exceeds the statutory tax levy increase limit of negative 0.761 for this school fiscal year, and therefore exceeds the state cap and must be approved by 60% of qualified voters and present and voting at the budget revote be held on Tuesday, June 16, 2026.
Second.
Mr. Sauter. Any discussion? All in favor? Oh, sorry, we'll do a roll call. We'll start with Ms. Dougherty.
Aye.
Mr. Sauter.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson. Mrs. Kane.
Aye.
Ms. Pignataro.
Aye.
I am also a yes. All in favor? Oh, Mr. Wright, sorry. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Moving on to consent agenda. Are there any items the board would like to remove from the consent agenda and place on the regular agenda? There's only one item tonight. Can I have a motion to approve consent agenda items F?
So moved.
Ms. Pignataro, second. Ms. Kane, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Moving on to the regular agenda, can I have a motion to accept the legal notice for the 26th budget revote to be held on June 16, 2026? Is that Mr. Wright? Second by Ms. Kane. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Can I have a motion to approve the following chief inspectors of elections? Ms. Kane, second. Mr. Wright, any discussion? All motion? All approved? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Open it up to the community members for any old or new business. Not hearing any, open it up to any of the trustees.
So, Mr. Miller, just to clarify for the folks that are here and watching at home, our next meeting then would be the June 8th budget adoption, is that correct? Or
That's a
budget hearing?
Yeah, it would
Budget
be
hearing.
the budget hearing, and that night we also have retirements and tenure. So we will do that first, and then the budget hearing would be after that. So probably, and we put it on at 7:45, but it'd probably be between 7:45 and 8 that night.
Okay.
Though our meeting's at 7.
Thank you.
Any other trustee questions? We have a motion to adjourn. Ms. Pignataro, second by Ms. Conley, all in favor. Thank you guys so much for coming tonight. We appreciate it.